at the end of the just kind of want to start off with some terms and acronyms, some basic terms and acronyms that you will see throughout the recruiting process. And I'm sure some of you have heard or seen some of these terms already, but just some of the major terms like the NCAA and the NAI. Those are the two major governing bodies for college athletics. Now, in fencing, there's no fencing teams in the NAI, so I won't really talk about that very much. But the NCAA is the main governing body for college athletics, and NCAA means National Collegiate Athletic Association. And then we talk about the FAFSA and the SAI. FAFSA, that's the free application for federal student aid, and SAI, that's student aid index. Now, just kind of a reminder that the original date when you used to be able to fill out the FAFSA was October 1st, but now it got moved back to December 31st, which will kind of push back the recruiting process a little bit, and I'll go into that in some later slides. All right, we'll also talk about today what it means to redshirt. We'll talk about the difference between official and unofficial visits. We'll talk about what it means to be a walk-on and a preferred walk-on. I'll talk about NIL and NLI, and then we'll also talk about what an offer means and what it means to get an offer and what offer means at different levels. So these are all things we'll talk about and go in a little bit more in depth during the presentation. Now, just kind of understanding levels of play. Now, within fencing, like I said, there's only the NCAA, and the NCAA has three divisions. There's Division I, Division II, and Division III. Now, the major differences in these levels is that at the Division III level, there's no athletic scholarships. So so you can't receive any athletic funding if, for example, if you're in fencing, you cannot get an athletic scholarship at the Division III level. Now, the Division II level and the Division I level both can offer athletic scholarships. Now, at the Division III level, these are examples of some schools that participate in fencing at the Division III level. Schools like MIT, NYU, JHU, Brandeis, Vassar. So in the United States, there are 16 Division III teams that offer fencing. Now, at the Division II level, there's only one team in the United States that offers fencing, and that's Wayne State. And at the Division I level, there are 28 schools that offer fencing at the Division I level. And there are three major conferences in fencing at the Division I level. There's the ACC, which is the Atlantic Coast Conference. There's the Ivy Leagues, which everyone's pretty familiar with the Ivy Leagues, which is, Harvard, Yale, Brown, those type of schools. And then the third league is called the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation. That's what the MPSF is, Mountain Pacific Sports Federation. So those are the three major conferences. And then you have a group of independent schools as well. So there are a total of 28 Division I schools, one Division II school, and 16 Division III schools in fencing in the NCAA. Now, just want to talk about scholarships a little bit. Now, there's two types of now, if you're receiving a scholarship, there's two types of sports. There's head count sports and there's equivalency sports. Now, fencing operates as an equivalency sport. But just to kind of give you an idea of what a head count sport is, a head count sport is a sport where there's only full scholarships. So in head count sports, there are no partial scholarships. There are only full scholarships. However, in fencing is an equivalency sport. And what an equivalency sport means is that a coach is given a certain amount of scholarships. And the best way to look at it, for example, in fencing, where you're allowed, for example, 5 scholarships, if tuition is $50,000 and you're allowed 5 scholarships, then that means the coach has $250,000 to give out however him or her decides. So they can give one student athlete $10,000, one student athlete $20,000, one student athlete a full ride, and one student athlete $1,000. So it's up to the coach's discretion to decide how much money they want to give each particular student athlete. And there are a lot of other factors that go into that, which I'll get into in later slides. Now, just kind of want to talk about the scholarships. I know everyone's concerned about scholarships. So as you can see in fencing at the Division I level, this is the women's example. At Division I, there are 5 scholarships available for Division I women's fencing. And there are 4.5 scholarships available at the Division II level in women's fencing. So everyone hopefully can see that. This is the women's example. Now, this is the men's example right here. So in fencing for men, there's 4.5 scholarships at Division I, and there's 4.5 scholarships at Division II. Now, keep in mind, I want to point this out. The 4.5, that's the maximum amount of scholarships that a school can have for fencing. But every school may not have the maximum amount. So there may be some schools that may have 2 scholarships or 3 scholarships or maybe 4.0. Every school doesn't have 4.5 full scholarships, but that's the maximum amount that you're allowed on the men's side for fencing. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities. Now, I know fencing isn't big at the high school level. I know there aren't many high schools that have fencing, that is more so a club or a sport that you play outside of high school. However, it is not your club coach or your high school coach's job to get you recruited or get you a scholarship. However, your coach should be able to provide you with stats, schedule, and film. Your coach should be able to give you an honest evaluation of what level they think you can play at. And your coach should be a resource and a support system in the process, because I always like to say that the recruiting process is a team effort. It should be the parent, the student athlete, and the coach all helping to help the student athlete make the best decision. Now I want to talk about eligibility. Now, to be eligible to compete as a freshman in the NCAA, these are the requirements. Now, the class of 2024, you do not have to take the ACT or SAT to be eligible to compete as a freshman. However, I always encourage every student athlete to still take the ACT or SAT, because there's only very few student athletes that get full scholarship, to get full athletic scholarships. And so the majority of student athletes will have to rely on some form of academic scholarship to help fund their tuition. And ACT and SAT can be used as criteria to distribute academic scholarships. So I encourage every student athlete to still take the ACT or SAT at least once, even though it's not required for eligibility. Now, you need 16 core courses. Now, your core courses, what are core courses? Your core courses are English, your maths, your science, and your social sciences. So, for example, physical education is not a core course. Art is not a core course. Your core courses, again, are your math, English, science, and social science. Now, you have to take at least 10 of those core courses before your 7th semester. So essentially what that means is, in your first 3 years, you have to take at least 10 of those courses, because the reason that rule is in place is because they don't want people to feel like they did a poor job your freshman and sophomore year, and then you can load up on classes your junior and senior year and make up for your poor performance your freshman and sophomore year. So that's what the 10-7 rule is. Now, you have to have a 2.3 core GPA, a 2.3 GPA in your core courses for at the Division I level, and at the Division II level, you have to have a 2.2 core GPA in order to be eligible to compete as a freshman. And then obviously you have to graduate from high school. So those are the eligibility standards to be eligible to compete as a freshman in the NCAA. Now I just want to talk about some things that student athletes and parents should be doing each year. For example, freshman year, the most important thing any student athlete can do freshman year is start getting good grades, because the better grades you get, the more opportunities you'll have, the more schools you'll have to choose from, and the larger academic scholarships you're able to get. So the most important thing that any freshman student athlete can do is start getting good grades and start establishing themselves academically. Also, freshman year, parents, it's a really good idea freshman year to start thinking about what's a realistic budget for college. All right, because of course every parent wants their kid to get a scholarship and wants them to get a full ride, but that's not the case for everyone. So freshman year is a really good time to start figuring out what's a realistic budget for college parents. Sophomore year, if you're on it's a really good time to start trying to put together film. Also, make sure that as a student athlete, and it's something that's very important, start to develop a diet, a workout, and a rest routine so that you're able to perform at your maximum level. Because there are a lot of student athletes that don't eat a proper diet, that drink a lot of soda, eat a lot of candy, and eat a lot of junk. But as a student athlete, you need to start being aware of your diet. You need to start being aware of eating fruits, eating vegetables, drinking more water, and drinking more juices and things of that nature that are good for your body. And also, it's very important to start making sure that as a student athlete, you're getting 8 hours of sleep every night, because you want to be able to perform at your maximum level. And to be able to perform at your maximum level, you have to eat a proper diet and you have to get enough rest. Also, get your social media account in order. We'll talk about that in later slides, because I have some example social media slides. Get your start on your student athlete resume. We'll talk about that in later slides. And we'll talk about club and travel again in later slides as well. Now, junior and senior year. The summer prior to your junior year is a really good time to start visiting colleges. I encourage student athletes to visit multiple schools, and we'll talk a little bit more about campus visits in later slides. Also, as a junior, it's a really good time to start getting a spreadsheet to get your recruitment organized, because there'll be some student athletes that will be recruited by 5 or 10 or even 15 schools. So you really want to get your recruitment organized and have all your schools listed and have whether you've been admitted, whether you filled out an application, whether you went on a visit, whether you've been offered a scholarship, just so that you know kind of what stage of the recruitment you are at with each particular school. All right. Also, junior year is a really good time to start emailing coaches. And we have a sample email here later in later slides that we'll show you. And then obviously junior year, you need to take the ACT or SAT if you haven't done it already. Senior year, make sure you're aware of application deadlines, because if you plan on applying to multiple schools, you probably should fill out the Common App, because the Common App is used by over 1,000 schools throughout the country. Make sure you take the ACT or SAT if you haven't taken it during the spring of your junior year. Also, check in with your counselor to make sure that you're meeting the eligibility standards for the NCAA or the NAIA. Also, cut down your list of schools to your top 10 or your top 5 schools. Your senior year, you shouldn't have 15 or 20 schools on your list still. All right. Also, fall of your senior year is a good time to start visiting schools. December 1st, you can complete the FAFSA. That's actually supposed to be December 31st is the first date you can complete the FAFSA. And then obviously having a backup plan if your target school doesn't work out. Now, I feel like every student athlete who's interested in being recruited should put together a student athlete resume. Now, your student athlete resume, what that consists of, you need to have an action photo at the top. You need to have your physical attributes. You need to have academic information, obviously your GPA, your test scores, your academic accolades. So if you were honor roll or National Honor Society, those need to be on there. Your statistics or your record needs to be there. And then any athletic accomplishments you have. If you were, all state or all conference, or if you won this tournament, or if you finished first place in this tournament, that needs to be there. And then obviously a link to film and your schedule. And then your contact information needs to be there as well, so that a college coach can reach out to you, or they can reach out to your coaches, or they can reach out to your parents if need be. All right. And then also have your high school or club coach's contact information, because any college coach will reach out to your high school or your club coach about you before they really get serious with the recruiting process. Now, how to use your athletic resume. Now, here's a sample email, and this is what your email should look like when you reach out to coaches. All right. Because you have to keep in mind, college coaches get a lot of emails every day. So you don't want to send them a long email, because they're not going to read a long email. So your email needs to be really short, really concise, and really to the point. And I encourage you to attach a copy of your student athlete resume to this email. And when you email, don't only email the head coach, email the assistant coaches as well. Email every coach on staff, all right, because you want every coach at a particular school to see you and know about you, so that hopefully they'll want to recruit you. Now, just want to talk about social media here. All right, I want to talk about social media a little bit. Here's some very simple do's and don'ts. All right, on social media, make sure that you have clean content. Make sure you have an action photo. Make sure you have a link to your film and your current schedule, and make sure you have your stats. Very simple don'ts. All right, no controversial quotes, no questionable images, and no out-of-date stats or contact information. So everything on your Twitter page or your social media needs to be up to date and current. Now, on the left right here, here's an example of a coach that stopped recruiting a kid because of their social media profile. It's very important, and I can't emphasize this enough, that your social media needs to be an asset in your recruitment, not a detriment in your recruitment. All right. And here's an example of a social media page here on the right side of the page. That's what your Twitter or your X page should look like. You need to have obviously your Twitter handle at the top. You need to have your real name, your school, the year you graduate, your club team. You need to have your accurate, your height, the position you play, your grade point average, and then you need to have a link to your film and a link to your schedule, because you want a college coach to be able to come to your social media page and be able to find out all the information they need to know about you. You want them to be able to find out your grades. You want them to be able to look at your film to see if you're good enough to play at the level. You want them to know what school you go to, what year in school you are, how tall you are. All of those things are very important for college coaches to know if they want to start the recruiting process with you. And also make sure your DMs are open, because you want college coaches to be able to DM you if they're interested in starting the recruiting process. Now, campus visits. Now, I think it is a very bad idea to commit to a school without first visiting. So I'm encouraging everyone in here, if you are really serious about a school, I encourage you to visit the school first before committing to the school. Now, there are two types of campus visits. There's an official visit and there's an unofficial visit. Now, there's been an important rule change. You used to only be allowed 5 official visits, but now you're allowed unlimited official visits. And an official visit is a visit that's paid for by the university that's recruiting you. And on an official visit, what happens is the school will pay for the student athlete and 2 guests to come to campus. So they'll pay for your transportation to campus, whether it's an airplane or whether it's a bus or whatever the case is. They'll pay for your transportation to and from campus. They'll pay for your lodging while you're on campus. So they'll pay for you to stay in a hotel overnight. And they'll pay for your meals while you're on campus. And they'll pay for those things for up to a 48-hour period. So that's what an official visit is. An unofficial visit is paid for by you, the parent and the student athlete, and you're allowed unlimited official visits. So those are the 2 types of visits. You have official visits, which are paid for by the school that's recruiting you, and you have unofficial visits, which are paid for by the parent and the student athlete. And beside these questions, I'll give you guys a lot of other questions you need to ask on campus visits. So when you're speaking to the coaches, ask the coaches, a coach, your players that graduated in the year of 23, in year 2022, and in 2021, where are they working at right now? Where do they have jobs at? Do you have relationships with alumni that can help me get a job when I graduate? Your kids that are juniors and seniors right now, where did they get internships at last summer? Can you help me get an internship when I become a junior or a sophomore? These are some very important questions that if the coach can't answer those questions, that may not be a good place for you. Also, injuries are an unfortunate part about college athletics, but it's important to ask the coach, what's your injury policy? Also, a lot of schools don't have ample budgets. And so fundraising a lot of times, some of the student athletes may have a fundraising responsibility. So on a campus visit, make sure you ask the coach, are there any fundraising responsibilities? Also ask them, are there any off-season responsibilities? Do we have to be here during the summer? So those are a lot of questions to ask coaches when you're going on campus visits. Also, these are questions to ask yourself to know if you're really being recruited and to know if you're really a priority for a specific school. Because when I coached at the college level, I used to always ask student athletes what other schools are recruiting you. And typically the student athletes will say a couple, realistic schools, and then they'll mention some big school that I know weren't recruiting them at all. So the way that you know if a school is recruiting you is, are the coaches in constant contact? Are they reaching out to you every week, every 2 weeks? Have they come out to see you play? Have they invited you out for an official visit or an unofficial? Now, if they invite you for an official visit, you know you're a really high priority. If they invite you for an unofficial, you're probably more of a secondary priority. Are the assistant coaches or the head coaches reaching out to you? If you only have had contact with the head coach and the head coach is reaching out to you every week or every 2 weeks, you are no question a top priority for that specific school, because the head coach only reaches out to the high priority student athletes. Now, if your only contact has been with the assistant coach, you're probably a tier 2 recruit. Now, have any other current players reached out to you? Have the coaches reached out to your high school or your club coach? And have the coaches tried to build a relationship with your parents or other people that are close to you? So these are ways to know that you're a priority and that schools are really taking you seriously and that a school really wants you. And the number one way to know if a school really wants you is if they offer you a scholarship. If they offer you a scholarship, you know without a doubt that you're a high priority and that they really want you. Now, I want to talk about ways to maximize your recruiting. All right, ways to maximize your recruiting. All right, building an athletic resume. Now, I know there are a lot of recruiting organizations out there that work with student athletes, that help them get recruited, that charge a whole lot of money. I'm here to tell people that you don't necessarily need a recruiting organization to help you. If you have a good social media presence, if you put together a student athlete resume, and you email coaches, you don't necessarily need an outside organization to help you with the recruiting process. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about the current recruiting climate. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the current recruiting climate. Um, Now, this is not necessarily the best time for high school student athletes, because colleges are looking for transfer student athletes. They're looking at junior college student athletes. They're looking at international student athletes. And so as a freshman student athlete, as a high school student athlete that's looking to go into a college as a freshman, you really need to make yourself stand out as a recruit. Ways to make yourself stand out are making sure that you have a presence on social media. All right, making sure that you're reaching out to college coaches. All right, making sure that you have your film updated. All right, making sure that you have updated transcripts at all times. These are some things that coaches are going to look for and they're going to ask for, and you need to have those things. Now, I want to talk about a few terms which I talked about earlier in the presentation, which I want to make sure everyone's aware of. So, some terms like red shirt. Everyone's probably heard the term red shirt. All red shirt means is that you are spending a year in school, but that year doesn't count against your eligibility. So a lot of times what will happen is if a kid comes to a school and they're not ready to play right away, a coach will say, hey, you can practice with the team, you can come to all the team events, but we're going to redshirt you, meaning you won't play this year. You won't play in any games, but you'll do everything else with the team. But this won't count as a year of eligibility for you. So, for example, if you're looking at a college game on TV or a college match on TV, and you see that someone is a red shirt sophomore, that means that that particular student, this is their third year in school, but this is only their second year of athletic eligibility that they're using. So that's what red shirting means. It means that you're in school, but you're not using a year of athletic eligibility. I want to talk about walk-ons. I know everyone's heard the term walk-on. A walk-on is simply a student athlete that is not on scholarship. That's what a walk-on is. Now, there's a new term that's come about called the preferred walk-on. And a preferred walk-on is just a student athlete that was recruited and that has a guaranteed spot on the team, but that is not on scholarship. So anytime you hear the term walk-on, that student athlete is not on scholarship. Also, I know you guys have heard the term offer, right? Offer. Now, offer can mean different things at different levels. Now, at the Division III level, where there's no athletic scholarships, an offer is just an offer of a roster spot. An offer has no financial implications whatsoever at the Division III level. Now, if you receive an offer at the Division II or the Division I level, that offer can be for anything. That offer can be for $500, for $1,000, for $5,000, for $10,000, or it can be a full ride. All right. So when you hear the term offer, that can mean a lot of different things. Want to talk a little bit about NIL. I know everyone's heard about NIL, which is name, image, and likeness. And essentially, that's just a way that student athletes can get paid. One thing I would encourage anyone in here to do is that if you have an opportunity to get an NIL deal, please have a lawyer look at that, because there have been a lot of student athletes this year that have not gotten what they thought they were going to get, or not gotten paid when they thought they were going to get paid, or there were discrepancies in the communication about when payment was going to be received. So if you are in position to get an NIL deal, please have a lawyer look at it so that you're clear as to what the terms are and what the payment is. Also, NLI, that's National Letter of Intent. So essentially, once you commit to a college, then you have an opportunity to sign what's called an NLI, which is the National Letter of Intent, which essentially is a contract, so to say, that is binding you to that specific school. All right. But a few other things I want to talk about here real quick, just how financial aid works. So everyone here has kind of heard about the FAFSA. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that you can negotiate tuition. That if you have two schools that are similar, then they will compete for you as a student athlete. You know, last year alone at Kelly College Consulting, we helped families save over $150,000 by helping families do financial aid appeals and tuition negotiations. And so just keep in mind that if you get a financial aid package, that's not necessarily the final cost or the final answer. All right. Also, social media. Every student athlete that's looking to get recruited should have a social media page. And I know there's some parents, for example, that don't allow their kids to social media pages. In that case, I would just advise a parent for you to control the social media page and not let the student athlete control it. But it definitely will be an advantage to have a social media page and to post. One thing I tell student athletes all the time is don't just have a social media page, but have a presence on social media. So make sure that you're tweeting out something every week or every 2 weeks. You know, even if it's something, you know, not even big, just, you know, tweet out, hey, you know, we had a match this week versus this team. Looking forward to the match this week versus that team. Or, hey, visited this school this week. Looking forward to visiting another school the next week. Just something real small, but make sure you have a presence on social media so that coaches will get a chance to know you and see your personality. And hopefully your personality will come out through your social media page. All right. Also, understanding important decision-making factors. I tell people all the time, there are four major factors that you need to use to judge a school. You need to look at every school that you're considering in four areas. You need to look at the school academically, athletically, socially, and financially. And if a school is a good fit for you in those four areas, then that probably is a school that you need to strongly consider going to. And another thing I would suggest, everyone wants to play at the highest level. Everyone wants to play Division I and play at the highest level. I always tell student athletes, it's not about playing at the highest level. It's about playing at the right level. You want to go to a school where you're going to feel comfortable, where you feel like you're going to fit in, where you feel like you're going to be an important member of the team, where you're going to feel like you're contributing to the team's success. all of those things are very important for a student athlete when they're picking a college. And so when you're looking at schools, consider all of those particular factors that I just mentioned. Now, that pretty much concludes the presentation. Now, here's my contact information. I do work with families one-on-one, guiding them through the recruitment process. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, feel free. That's my email address up at the top. Excuse me, my website at the top, my phone number right there, my email address, and also you can follow me on Twitter. And I have 2 QR codes. The QR code on the left, that is I have a monthly recruiting newsletter. And if you scan that QR code on the left, it's just going to ask you for your name and your email address. And then you'll become part of my mailing list for my newsletter every month. And it's a free newsletter. No one has to pay for it. And you'll get a copy of it every single month if I get your email address and your name. The QR code on the right, that's what I like to call my resource sheet. I encourage everyone to scan that because that has a lot of really good information. It has about 10 different terms in the recruiting process that I have defined. I have about 6 or 7 good websites that are good websites as far as resources in the recruiting process. I also have a list of questions to ask coaches when you go on campus visits. I also have a list of things that you should do each year. Like I have 10 things you should be doing freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and senior year. So it's a very good document that I like to call my resource sheet, which is very informational and educational for you parents and student athletes to leave with, and it'll help guide you through the recruitment process. And so that concludes my presentation right there. I want to open it up for questions. So if you have any questions, if you could maybe type them in the chat and we can get to them. But if you have any other questions for me, my contact information is right there. Again, my email address, my phone number, my website, and my Twitter page. I can be contacted any of those ways. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions or you want to reach out to me for one-on-one consultation. So does anybody have any questions?
Okay, well, thank you. Can you hear me right now? Okay, good. Yeah. Well, thank you, Todd, for the very quick introduction. This is, you went through it very fast. I was trying to catch up, but, I was able to note down some things that I was interested. But first of all, would you be able to share the stack after the meeting, or this is for your presentation only?
You said to share the presentation? You mean I share the PowerPoint?
Yes.
No, I typically don't share the PowerPoint, but the QR code at the end, it has a lot of the information that's in the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, maybe you can share that with us then. If someone
okay, yeah, you know what? I'll drop those 2 in the chat too. I'll drop those 2 QR codes as well.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Now, go ahead. I'm ready for questions if anyone has any questions.
Okay, good. So, I type in the first questions when they, when you were not done yet, because I had some questions while listening to your presentation.
Okay.
First question is about official visit. Is official visit by invitation only? Hey, Todd? Oops. Is it me or you?
Okay, Todd somehow dropped, but he's coming back.
Okay.
Oh, hey, sorry about that. I dropped off. I don't know what happened, but can you repeat that question? Sorry.
Okay, well, my question was that is if the official visit is by invitation only?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Yes. Yep. Because for an official visit, it has to be by invitation because the coaching staff, they are paying for it. So they have to contact you and invite you to come on a visit and make arrangements for you. So official visits are by invite only. Now you can take unofficial visits. You can just take an unofficial visit whenever you want to because they're paid for by you. And so those are not necessarily invite only, but official visits are invite only by the coaching staff.
Gotcha. Okay, all right. The second question is also mine. I just want to put in some questions before your presentation was over. Okay. I guess I spelled wrong. Is NLI, right? National Letter of Intent is NLI? Yes. Okay, yes. I think it's spelled wrong. Okay. NLI, a formal contract? And because I heard this a lot, honestly, that in the fencing community and some great fencer and receive the NOI and they committed it. And then later on, they figured that's not their dream school or they got something else, then they turned down it. So what will be the consequences?
The consequences, okay. Now, these are the consequences. Once you sign the national letter of intent, it's essentially a binding contract. Now, the consequences are that in order to then say, for example, if you want to go to one school and you're like, oh, I don't like the school now, I want to go to another school. You then have to go to the school that you originally committed to. They have to let you out of the commitment. Like they could decide not to let you out of the national letter of intent. And then you would have to sit out that current season, you know, and not be able to play to that next season if they don't let you out of that commitment. Now, most schools, if you go to them, they'll let you out of the commitment because it's a very bad kind of, you'll get a bad reputation as a school if you try to bind the kid to a commitment and then try to make them not play that next year because you're upset that they decided to decommit. So there are consequences, but typically a school will let you out of that commitment because, again, it's like it'll give you a bad reputation amongst future recruits if you don't let people out, you know?
Right. I got it. Because this is what I heard, you know, in the past, in the fencing community. That's why I asked the question. Okay, so next one, I think Charlie, that's your question.
Yes. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. You know, your presentation is the most precise and concise one, the best one I ever heard.
Thank you.
You know, in my humble opinion, you should run for the Harvard University's president. Yes, I would vote for you if I have that vote. But anyway, my question is, my kids are very small. You know, they will be applying for college several years down the road. However, I have a more general question. You know, how do we promote fencing sport to colleges that now do not have any fencing teams? Any tips, any advice?
Well, what I would say is typically if a school doesn't have fencing or if a school doesn't have a sport, right, then the sport has to first be introduced as probably an intramural sport because it's kind of like a steps to it. You know what I mean? For a sport to become an official sport, first of all, it has to be introduced as an intramural sport. Then it has to go to being a club sport. And then after it goes to being a club sport, then it has an opportunity to be introduced as an NCAA sport, like an official sport that the school then sponsors. So the best way, and that's a process, that's usually like a 3 to 5 year process. So say, for example, I know you said you got young kids. Say if your kids know the school they want to go to already, right? For example, say if they wanted to go to Harvard. Now, Harvard, they have fencing, but say if Harvard didn't have fencing and they wanted to go to Harvard, then what they would do is write them a letter and say, hey, you know, is it any way y'all can start intramural fencing? Because I think it'd be a good idea to maybe start a fencing team, and then they'll start it out on intramural. They'll see what type of reception they get. They'll see if it's a lot of participation. They'll see if it's a lot of interest in it. And then if there's a lot of interest, then they'll move it to the club level. And then because once you play it at the club level, then you can start traveling around playing other schools. But then it's just not sanctioned by that particular university. And then once it becomes an NCAA sport, then it's funded by the university. You travel around to different schools, and then it's a real sport. So that's kind of the process of making any sport a sport at a school.
So should we address that letter to the athletic director or?
Yes, the athletic director. Yep, absolutely, athletic director. Yep.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I think there was another question in the chat. I know someone had asked if a student doesn't have a social media account, does he have to have one for colleges to look at? And the answer to that question is no, you do not have to have a social media page. It's not a situation where you won't get recruited if you don't have a social media page. However, it can be a tremendous asset in your recruitment, you know? So that's kind of the best way to look at it. But, and I know, like, again, I understand a lot of parents are kind of apprehensive about their teenagers being on social media or about their teenagers having a social media account. If that's the case, if that's the concern, then again, I would just say as a parent, maybe you can be the one that has the password and that runs the social media page and that posts the information on there and that monitors the page. That way your child won't have control of it, and that way you can monitor all of the content that goes in and that comes out of the page. So that's what I suggest if you're a parent that doesn't want your kid to have social media. But if you are a parent that allows your kid to have social media, I would still monitor that, because you want to make sure that your student athletes are putting out content on social media, which is positive content, which will help them during the recruiting process. Because one thing I always tell people about social media is that even though high school student athletes are not professionals, you need to have a professional appearance on social media. You need to have a professional persona on social media. And so your appearance on social media is very, very important and can go a long way to helping you get recruited. Or if you have a negative appearance, it can go a long way to not getting you recruited. So any other questions? Sorry, I know I kind of went on about that. But...
Sure. Okay, well, on the social media side, because this is a sensitive issue, I wanted to follow up on that. So will the school look at all the social media posts that these students have done?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because at most, especially at the Division I level, now this is not really the case at the Division III level, because at the Division III level, the coaching staffs are not as big and there's not as much funding. But at the Division I level, almost every Division I school now has a person on staff called a social media specialist. And a lot of people think that social media specialist just like puts out social media content for the university. But that social media specialist is actually responsible as well for checking the social media pages of the current students and checking the social media pages of potential recruits, because they're going to search your social media profile to make sure that you don't have any bad content. Because if you have stuff on your social media page that's maybe inappropriate, or, you know, whatever the case may be, schools will stop recruiting you because of that. So that social media specialist at that school, it's their job to deep dive everyone's social media and to research every recruit to make sure that the kids that they're recruiting are the type of kids that they want to represent their school. So absolutely, there are people at the school that are checking students' social media posts and social media pages.
Okay. So I'm sorry I'm using everyone's time, but this is a real case. I wanted to follow up again because I know somebody's kids have said something inappropriate in his, let's say, 9th grade. And then obviously when he become a senior, junior, senior year, it's a long time ago, right? 3-4 years ago, that old post. Will that, the things that he said and he posted on the social media, have any negative impact on this student?
It absolutely can. It absolutely can. So because, for example, there have been coaches who have stopped recruiting kids because of posts that they put on social media. Now, what I will say is this, for that example that you just said, like the kid put some on social media, maybe his freshman year and they're a senior now. One thing I would do is, if I was a student athlete, I would just tell the coach up front. I would say, hey, coach, you know, as a freshman, I posted something on social media. It may have been a little bit inappropriate, but I'm a lot more mature now. I understand that was not appropriate what I did. I understand, you know, now that I'm a lot more responsible and I'm a lot more mature. I've learned from my mistakes. So, you know, please don't hold that against me, because I understand now what I need to do and what I don't need to do. And most coaches will understand and won't hold that against you if you're upfront about it. Because one thing that coaches like to see is they like to see growth. You know what I mean? They like to see somebody that as a freshman wasn't very good, but as a sophomore, they got better. As a junior, they got better. And as a senior, they got better. And so coaches will understand growing and maturing, and that you understand what's right and what's wrong now. So most coaches won't hold that against you if you're upfront with them about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, so all right. Promise no more questions. And I will read through the questions from the audience.
Jason, there's one more question. Christina?
Yeah, Christina, yes. Yeah. That's why I'm seeing that right now. How early should athletes start their college recruiting process?
Well, this is the thing. Colleges, Division I colleges, they can reach out to student athletes once they get into high school. Now, but what I would say for student athletes, the time to get serious about the recruiting process, I would say, is after your sophomore year. Like after your sophomore year, I would really start to, because at that point, you kind of know, like, if you're actually good enough to play in college, then you kind of know if you really want to play in college, you know, and then by that point, you kind of establish yourself a little bit because you played 2 years already. So I would say after your sophomore year is a good time to really start looking at what colleges would be a good fit for you. And it's also a good time to maybe start emailing colleges. And when you email them just saying, hey, we're really interested in your university. We'd love to kind of come take a visit. So I would say right after your sophomore year is a really good time to really start getting serious. Now, keep in mind, though, a lot of coaches, well, especially the Division II and Division III coaches, they're not going to reach out to student athletes until after your junior year. So just kind of keep that in mind. And one thing I want to point out as well is that the recruiting process has really been pushed back from where it was not only 1 year ago, but 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago, because now a lot of coaches are looking for transfer student athletes first. And so for example, that's making coaches wait longer to recruit high school student athletes. And then another important rule change this year that's pushed the recruiting process back is that the FAFSA used to be you were able to fill it out October 1st in previous years. Now you can't fill it out to December 31st. So with it being pushed back, now people are not going to get financial aid packages until a little bit later. So if you're not getting financial aid packages till a little bit later, now people are going to make college decisions a little bit later because people have to know what the cost of tuition is before they make a commitment to a school. So with kids not getting their financial aid packages till later, college commitments will get pushed back later. The recruiting processes got pushed back a little bit. So just kind of want to let everybody know that ordinarily a lot of kids will be committing to schools in March or February or April. Now is going to be a lot more of April and May when kids are going to be committing to schools.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you. Okay, let me see. Is there any more questions that posted in the room? If not, then I have more questions.
Okay, go ahead. Oh,
okay.
And I also posted my QR codes in the chat. If anybody wanted those QR codes, I'm pretty sure I posted them in the chat.
Okay, good. So another question is about online schools.
Okay.
Influencing the kids who participate a lot of the tournaments, international and domestic,
Yes.
will have to absent on a lot of days in the schools. You know, most
Oh,
of the
okay. Right.
schools don't allow that,
Right.
right? So
Right.
at certain point, some of the students, athlete students, will have to make a choice whether they go online school or they have to give up some of the tournaments. It's a real thing because
Right.
a
It's
lot of
right.
you're right, because you travel so much. And so the question is that will the university look at those students differently if they will go to online versus a traditional school?
No, they won't. They won't, because the two things that are going to be important that schools look at are, number one, your grades. So if you got good grades, it don't matter where you were homeschool or whether you took school in school building with actual students. If you have good grades, that's the number one thing they look at. And then the second thing, the reason why it won't hurt you is because if you're a talented student athlete, then they're going to want you. So if you have good grades and you're a talented athlete, the fact that you went to school online won't hurt at all. It won't hurt you at all. So coaches they're not going to look down upon that. That's not a negative at all. As long as you're getting good grades and you've completed the classes and you're a good athlete, they don't care whether you took classes online or in the classroom.
Okay. Well, sometimes it's not a coach. It's the school, the committee, the admission committee. Will the admission committee look at the students? Will look at the students who attend the normal day school more favorably than the ones who are attending the online schools?
Now, that's a good question. And I think it can be a situation where sometimes, and because I've worked in admissions before, and I think there is a tendency a little bit for sometimes admissions counselors or universities to not have as much, and I hate to say it like this, but to not have as much respect for the curriculum of online than they do for the curriculum of in school. So in that case, what happens is, like for kids that do school online, then your essay will be a lot more important, when you're applying for a college, because that's a representation of your writing and of your intelligence and that type of thing. So for those kids that are doing strictly online school, your essay is going to be a lot more important than the essay for kids that may have done, traditional in school, if that makes sense, hopefully.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I see that you posted
My QR codes. Yep.
The QR code. Okay. All right. So
And I have a question. Oh, I see a question right here when it says, how important is it for fencing students to keep up high grades in college? Okay, so once you get in college. Well, to be honest with you, you obviously need to maintain academic eligibility. So to be able to continue to be on the fencing team and to continue to be an NCAA athlete, you have to maintain academic eligibility, which typically is a 2.0 or either 2.5 GPA. So you do have to just maintain academic eligibility. But outside of that, you don't have to maintain high grades in order to do fencing. But obviously, everyone wants to strive to get as good a grades as possible. So it is good to still try to get, as many A's as you can. However, as long as you're meeting the minimum academic standards for eligibility, then you'll be able to continue fencing, and then obviously you'll continue to be on track to graduate.
Right. Understood. Okay, we have a new question. For sports with very few recruiting spots every year, is it better for academically strong athletes to go for a walk-on?
Okay, that's a good question. Now, what I would say is I don't think anybody should necessarily set their goals on being a walk-on, because your goal should be to earn a scholarship. Now, if there's a school that you really, really like, that you really feel like you're a good fit for academically, and they have a fencing program, but you didn't get offered a scholarship, then yes, I think it is a good idea to reach out to that coach and say, hey, coach, I'm really interested in this school. I would really love to come here. Is there, do you have any walk-on spots available? And then typically most schools are going to have walk-on spots available. But one other reason why that's good, because I know you mentioned, as far as the question, an academically strong student will probably won't get as much money, athletic money from the coach, because the coach knows that particular student is going to get a large amount in academic scholarship money. So that's something as well that I think people need to understand. And I think, and I really want to address this, because I think a lot of people think, for example, that, merit scholarships are just based on merit or just based on your grades, when that's not the case all the time. And I think a lot of people think that athletic scholarships are just based on how good of an athlete you are. And that's not always the case. So I'll give you an example. If there are two students, for example, if one student has a 4.0 and another student has a 3.0, and say tuition at a school is $20,000. Well, the coach knows that kid that has a 4.0 is going to get $15,000 in academic scholarship money. And the coach knows that kid that has a 3.0 is only going to get $10,000 in academic scholarship money. So now that coach is like, okay, the kid with the 4.0, I only have to give them $5,000 to make them have a full scholarship. But the kid with the 3.0, I'd have to give them $10,000 to make them have a full scholarship. So the coach is going to recruit the kid with the 4.0 first, because they have to give them less money to make them have a full scholarship. So that just shows how academics will play a role in who gets recruited. Typically, kids with better grades, if the ability level is similar, the kid with the better grades is going to get recruited first every single time. And as far as merit scholarships are concerned, I think a lot of people think, oh, merit scholarships are just based on how good a grade you are. No, a lot of times merit scholarships are based on your financial situation as well, because the school is not going to give you more money than they think you can. If they think you have a lot of money and can afford to pay tuition, they're not going to give you more money and let you pay less tuition if they think you can afford to pay more tuition. So just kind of keep that in mind, that colleges are a business and their number one goal is to make money. So just kind of keep that in mind as you go through the recruitment process.
Right. So let me add a question on walk-on, because, I personally, I don't have a kid who went through that process. I heard a lot of people did. And how does walk-on work? So just,
okay.
Yeah, please.
Essentially, with walking on, you have to just try out. That's what a walk-on is. Because, like, for example, on every team, they're going to have, say if the roster size is 10 student athletes, right? Or say they'll usually have an additional 2 kids who are walk-ons. And so the way a walk-on is, basically you just come and you try out for the team. You weren't recruited. A lot of times the coaches don't even know who the walk-ons are before they even get to campus. They'll just have a day when they have tryouts. Those kids will come, they'll try out for the team. And if they make the team, they'll be on the team. And then they obviously won't be getting any scholarship because they're a walk-on. But what I would suggest, if anyone plans on walking on, I don't suggest just going to the walk-on going to the tryout, the first day the tryout is. What I would suggest is, if there's a school that you're looking at, reach out to the coach beforehand. Let the coach know, hey, I really, like your school. I'm really interested in coming here. are there any spots available on the team? I would be interested in potentially walking on if you do have a tryout. That way the coach is aware of you, and that way it's not just that you're showing up and you're just trying out with maybe 100 other people that's trying out. You know what I mean? So just try to communicate to the coach prior to the tryout to let them know you may be interested in walking on.
I see. So the walk on is really just a demonstration of your sports skills, right? They won't let you to play.
Well, if you're better than the people that are on scholarship, they will, but more than likely you won't be better than the people that are on scholarship. You know what I mean? Now, there are instances though where kids walk on as a freshman and then they really work hard and they improve and they improve. And then by their maybe senior year, they've really, really improved. And then the coach then decides to offer them a scholarship because they've improved enough to where they're better than some of the other kids. But very rarely does a walk-on then earn a scholarship.
Right. Got it. Okay, so we have a question posted in the chat room, still from Maria. And what happens if a student cannot continue fencing after being admitted with a sports scholarship?
Well, what happens is, first of all, scholarships are year to year. So everyone needs to know that every scholarship is year to year. Your scholarship is not 4 years, it's every year. Now, what happens is your scholarship can't be taken though in the middle of the year. So say if you're fencing and say you get injured in November, your scholarship lasts throughout that whole academic school year though. You know what I mean? So you will still be on scholarship to the end of till May, for example, when the school year ends. You'll be on scholarship until then. And then what happens is, usually you'll just have a conversation with the coach. If you're able to come back and like if your injury is not like a, serious injury that won't allow you to play anymore, then usually you'll just rehab and you'll come back and you'll usually maintain your scholarship and you'll just be able to play the next year. Now, if it's an injury where it's like debilitating, where you can't play anymore, then typically, you won't be on scholarship that next year. You'll have to just pay for school because you won't be able to participate anymore as a student athlete.
Okay. Now, follow up on this question, it's another real example. It happens more often than not in the fencing community. The group that we have, I think in the entire fencing community for the student athletes and the families,
yes.
Probably few of them will be expecting scholarships.
Right.
Because most of the families and the students athletes will thrive to get into the best school they can go to, right? So both academically and athletically. So they will wanted to try for a better school, even another school with, might offer them, scholarships. They might just give up the opportunity and want for a better school. That's just the reality in this sports. So the question is that if somebody receives this offer, let's say that joining the school's school sports team, the fencing team, and they just quit after, let's say after 1 year, what would happen?
Well, you just wouldn't get your scholarship that second year. That's all that would happen. You could still, obviously be a student at that school and, come back to the school and all that stuff. You just wouldn't get your scholarship. You just wouldn't get a scholarship if you're not playing anymore. That's it.
Right. Okay. So let's say, assuming that that athlete or that student did not have a scholarship to begin with.
Right.
So
okay. Well, if they didn't have a scholarship to begin with, then the money that they got in terms of like the academic scholarships and all that stuff, none of that would change. It would be the same freshman year, sophomore year. It wouldn't change at all because it had no bearing on your athletic performance or your athletic participation. So your status as a student, your financial aid that you're getting or whatever would stay the same.
Right. But at least that the bottom line is that they will not be kicked out of the school, right?
Oh, no, absolutely not. You can never be kicked out of school because you don't play a sport anymore. Now, your scholarship can be taken, but you will still be allowed to be a student at the school, provided you're in good academic standing. Provided you're in good academic standing, then you'll be allowed to continue at the school. So your participation in sports has nothing to do with your status as a student at the particular university.
Okay. Got it. Okay, let me see. I guess there's still no more questions on that. Well, then, if I like to add more because it's more like, dialogue now instead of Q&A, but I guess I can ask a lot of questions I know that parents had in mind. So when we go through this recruiting, right? Athletic recruiting, how important are the feedbacks from the current sports team?
The feedback?
Yes. How
It is
important their comments or their views on this particular athletes?
very important, very important. And I'll give you an example of some questions that the coaches will ask. Like for example, if a coach is recruiting you, they're going to ask your current coach. They're going to ask them, "Hey, does this person have a good attitude? Are they a hard worker? Are they coachable? Do you like having them on your team? Do they show up on time to practice? You know, do they stay late and do extra work? Do you like having them on your team? Should I want them on my team?" So those are some questions that they're going to ask because every college coach, they have to do their research, you know, on you as a student athlete. And they're not only going to ask, you know, your coach. Most coaches at the college level are probably going to try to meet the parents as well. They're going to want to meet mom and dad and just to kind of see what type of environment, what type of background you're from, you know, just so they get a chance to know what type of student athlete you are. Because the recruiting, I mean, the coach cannot bring in a student athlete to their school that is a troublemaker or that will embarrass the school or that will embarrass the program, because then that coach's job is in jeopardy. You know, that coach could get fired if he brings in student athletes that don't represent the school in the right way. So coaches will absolutely do their research. They will definitely call your high school coaches. They may even, you know, call up your high school counselor just to kind of get another opinion of you, you know, and that type of thing. So absolutely, those coaches will do their research and they will talk to your coaches and ask them about you.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, we have a question from the audience. How much can a D3 Division 3 school influence admission since it cannot actually give offers?
Okay, well, a Division 3 coach can give offers. They just have no financial you know, implications at all. When a D3 coach offers you, they're offering you a roster spot. Okay, but there has no financial implications. And to answer the question, what I'll say is this: at schools that are trying to win, and if the coach has been at the school for a while and the coach has a good relationship with admissions and the department, then they can influence it. But if the school is not trying to win and the coach doesn't have a good relationship with the admissions department, then the coach probably can't influence the decision. And I'll give an example. I was a head coach at the Division 3 level. Now I coach basketball. I didn't coach fencing. However, what a lot of coaches, what I was able to do, because I had a great relationship with our admissions department, is every year I would go to our admissions department and I would give them a list. And I would say, here, these are my top 7 recruits. If these recruits are borderline at all, please let them in. And we had an agreement that if any of these 7 kids were borderline in terms of their academic requirements, so say, for example, the minimum academic requirements for admission was a 3.5. If one of these kids had a 3.4, I need you to let them in. You know what I mean? And so, but I had a good relationship with our admissions department and we were trying to win. So that's why they were able to let me get a little bit of, you know, wiggle room, so to say, in terms of getting a kid in school who may have been slightly below what the standards were or who may have been borderline. So to answer that question, yes, the coach can have some influence if they have a good relationship with the admissions department, that they can influence some admissions decisions. But only if the kid is borderline, though. Like if the admission decision, if the standard is 3.5 and the kid has a 2.5, well, no, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? But if the standard is 3.5 and the kid maybe has a 3.3 or a 3.4, then yeah, they could probably do some things.
Right. Okay. I see we have a lot of new people joining. I guess they missed majority part of the presentations. So I wanted to ask a question that regarding the offer and those conceptual questions. And that also includes a verbal offer, because in fencing, at least in fencing, probably in basketball, any other sports as well, that a coach can give you a verbal offer saying that, you know what, I want you to be in my team when you go to the senior year. So that's most likely when you were still a junior students, right? So, but this has to be confidential. You cannot disclose, cannot talk about this with anybody else, probably only your parents, right? No one else can know. I don't know whether we call that verbal offer. Then we talk about offer. Is it more like so we consider the, is offer different than the NOI? Or is
Well,
it-
okay, yeah. So the offer, like I was talking about, like you just said, yeah, the offer is verbal, right? So when the coach says, "Hey, we're offering you," that's verbal. Now, but again, like that is not binding either. You know what I mean? Because it's a verbal offer, so it's not binding. The
Right.
NLI is binding. You know what I mean? Because that's a paper that's essentially a contract. You know what I'm saying? Now,
Right.
what I will say is college recruitment has gotten shady over the years. And I hate to use that word, but it's gotten a little bit shady and it's gotten a little bit disingenuous to say. For example, like some coaches are now offering kids and then telling them, "Hey, I'm offering you, but you have until Friday at noon to give me a decision," you know, or they'll offer two kids and then the first kid that commits, they'll take. And then the second kid, they'll say, "Oh, well, the offer's not on the table anymore because somebody else took it." You know what I mean? So coaches are doing some things nowadays which are not exactly high ethic or that type of thing, which people wouldn't think are as ethical or as moral as you would like. You know what I mean? And so you got to kind of be careful with that as well. Now, I think fencing is a lot more pure than football or basketball. You know what I mean? Where a lot of those type of things happen. So I don't think anyone has to necessarily worry about that in fencing, but I just want to kind of let people know that there are some impurities in college athletics and that there are some coaches who, are disingenuous sometimes, and I hate to say that. So
Sure. Understood. So I guess the things that I wanted to clarify is that the offer has two forms. One is a verbal offer from the coach,
right,
and it's not binding on either side.
right,
The
right,
other one
right.
is NLI.
Okay, yeah.
National-
So right. So once you say if a coach offers you, right, and you be like, and you say, "Hey, coach, I'm accepting the offer. I want to come here," then they give you the NLI.
Oh, they do that right away?
Yeah, well, not right away. It's a signing date that you can sign, but
Okay.
it's a signing date. So for example, like for football, the signing date is like February the 8th. So it's like next Thursday. For other sports it's different. I don't know what the signing date is for fencing, but they have signing dates for each sport. And on the signing date is when you sign that NLI.
Gotcha. So the reason I say that is that because the conceptual, I think I want to understand, there's a verbal offer and there's a written offer, which is NLI. And for the people who does not go for the athletic route, they will receive a offer, so-called offer on
Right.
the letter, right? That's a normal way of getting an admission letter, right? So
Right.
I guess that's, I wasn't clear about this. Probably some of the parents were not clear either. So that's why I want to clarify this.
Right. Like, yeah. So like so you know how you get, like, when you apply to school, you get your admissions letter that says, "Hey, you're accepted to the school." Like, yeah, you don't get a letter like that when the coach offers you. Then you don't get a letter in the mail that says, "Hey, we're offering you a scholarship." No, it doesn't work like that. No, it's just pretty much verbal, and then it moves to the NLI.
To NLI. Gotcha. Okay. All right. So now we have questions from the audience again, and
Okay.
a full to the previous question, follow up to the to the previous question. How to know if Division 3 wants to win?
A follow up to the previous question: how you know if the D3 wants to win? That is a good question. The way I would look at it is that you need to look at the school's track record. Look at the school's track record, and not necessarily in fencing, but look at the school's track record in a lot of other sports. And if a lot of the other sports are successful, then you know that school wants to win. And what I mean by wants to win, the reason I say wants to win and why they'll may let, because I know the answer to my previous question was that, if they really want to win, they may let a kid in, or they may let the coach influence some admissions decisions. And the way that you kind of know that is because, like, every kid that's getting recruited is probably getting recruited by multiple schools. You know what I mean? And so, like, a lot of times I'll tell her, when I was recruiting a kid, I would go to the admission department. I would say, "Hey, we really need to get this kid in because these other two schools in our conference have already let him in." You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by, that's how you know if the school wants to win, is that are they trying to compete with other schools that are their competitors? That's how you know if they want to win. You know what I mean? So for example, if I say, "Hey, I got it." So I'll give you an example. Let's use the Ivy Leagues. All of the Ivy Leagues pretty much have very, very similar admission standards. You know what I mean? So if you get admitted to Harvard and say the coach at Yale wants you, and he goes and tells, his admissions people, "Hey, he got admitted to Harvard and we're Yale. Why are we not letting him in?" And then if they end up letting that person in, then you know that they want to win. But if they say, no, we're not letting this person in, then they don't want to win because it's like, well, you're telling that kid, you can go to our number one competitor. We don't care. You know what I mean? You don't want to win that bad. If you're letting someone go to your number one competitor, I mean, just look at it like a business. What business that sells a product is going to say, hey, you can go buy from my number one competitor. That's okay. No business is going to do that wants to stay in business. You know what I mean? If you want to stay in business, you're going to be like, no, come spend your money with me. Don't go to that other person. So that's how you know if they want to win or not. Are they willing to compete with other schools that are their competitors?
Okay. Very well. Okay, well, again, if someone has a follow-up question, please type in the chat box. So let's move on to the next one from Jane. Are the Ivy League schools any different from other schools in terms of the recruiting process?
Well, what was the question? Oh,
Ivy League schools any different than from?
Oh, yes. Okay, Ivy Leagues are a little bit different from the standpoint of, even though they're Division I, no Ivy Leagues offer athletic scholarships in no sports, like in basketball, football, fencing, track, none. Ivy Leagues, even though they're Division I, they're unique because they don't offer athletic scholarships. So and then also Ivy Leagues are kind of unique from the standpoint of, obviously you have to have great grades, but the coaches have to like really kind of look into your transcripts and kind of do a deep dive into your academics before they really start recruiting you, because they have to know you're going to be able to get admitted. So obviously academics are a lot more important when you're talking about the Ivies. And the big difference is, like I said, they don't offer any athletic scholarships, even though they're Division I. So that's kind of the thing that makes the Ivy League stand out from an athletic standpoint.
Right.
I think everybody's aware of their academic status.
Sure. But from process perspective, they are the same.
Yes, the process is the same. Yeah, process is the same. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, the next one. Can a university back out of a NLI before the signing date, since the offer is not binding yet? In other words, does a planned NLI guarantee admission?
That's a good question, and that happens often. Happens
really?
Often.
Okay.
Yeah, that happens where, for example, a coach will say, "Hey, we're offering you a full scholarship. Signing date is, say it's February 10th, and you're supposed to sign on February 10th." And then a coach will come up and the reason this happens is because with transfers nowadays, if a coach is able to get a kid to come in that may be a junior that's played 2 years already, that's really, really good, do you think that coach is going to take that junior who's really, really good, or they're going to still keep that commitment to that freshman who they don't know how good that freshman is? No, that coach is going to go with that junior who they know has already been in college for 2 years, who's already proven, who they already know is, reliable, instead of that freshman who they really don't know about. So yes, schools have done that, but what I will say is this.
Okay.
That's rare though, because
I'm sorry, can we mute? Okay. Yeah, please. Sorry.
Okay. No, I was saying so yes, that can happen where a school can back out of your if they offered you and they say, hey, your signing date is this date, they can back out, but that's rare that happens, just because that'll give that coach a really, really bad reputation. Mm-hmm. And that'll kind of scare away other recruits, because then other recruits will look at it like, hold on, okay, he offered me the scholarship. Is that real or not? Is he going to back out at the last minute? You know what I mean? So
right.
Coaches typically won't do it. Like I said, it has happened, but they typically won't do it because it really, really gives them a bad reputation.
Okay. But at the end of the day, a contract is not a contract until signed.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions here, or?
Okay, well, I don't see any questions popping up. And if the audience, I know people, joining late, and some of the guys, left, some of guys just joined. Whatever question you have, please type in the chat box, and we can talk now. It's a good opportunity for us to ask, all the questions that we wanted to know.
Right. And also, I was going to say too, if anybody, I know I put the QR codes in the chat, so if anybody wants those QR codes, you can scroll up in the chat, and it's a QR code, one that has like a resource sheet, which is a lot of good recruiting information. for everybody to take with them. And then the other QR code is I just ask for your name and email, and you'll be, on my mailing list for my monthly newsletter. And it's a completely free newsletter. I put it out every month, and it's just a recruiting newsletter that kind of gives a recruiting tip, and I define a relevant term in recruiting, and then I have a quote from a Division I coach. So it's a really good newsletter.
Sure. I think all the information is in the chat box, right?
Yep.
There's one more question we missed. I received a
yes.
separate message saying like UCLA, me, they both have club fencing, and how to convince the administration officer or department to add fencing in their NCAA profile.
Oh, okay. That's a good
Portfolio.
question. Okay. Now, one thing I'll say, and I didn't mention, you said UCLA, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, one thing I'll say is that may be a challenge because, and I don't know how much, if you guys are aware, but the majority of the colleges in the United States that offer fencing are on the East Coast. I think it's only maybe 1 or 2 schools in California. I think it's like 1 school in Arizona and maybe like 1 school in Texas and maybe a school in Colorado or something like that. But like at least like 75% of the schools that offer fencing are on the East Coast, and there's a couple in the Midwest. So first of all, I don't know how likely that is at UCLA. The reason I said it, so I don't know how likely it is UCLA would start fencing, because who are they going to compete against? You know what I mean? They'd have to fly across country for every competition. You know what I mean?
On the West Coast, they do. They have Stanford. They have at least UC San Diego. At least.
Okay, so they got a few. Okay. And so what I would say is the best thing to do is, obviously, since they have club, is to write a letter to the athletic director. And then, but the one thing too, when you're trying to start a sport, right, you usually have to have a faculty athletic rep, or I mean, so you have to have a faculty representative that like supports that sport being started. So you're probably gonna have to get with a faculty member that is like your sponsor, so to say, and then write a letter to the athletic director. And you just have to say, hey, look, because you got to show interest in the sport. So you got to show that there's a lot of people that are interested in the sport, both male and female. You got to be able to show that maybe the sport can make some type of a revenue. You got to put out what the budget is. So you really got to do your research, because you have to put all the information out there so that the university can make a decision. You got to let them know how much would a typical season cost. Like I said, what should the budget be? What's the typical roster size? Who else competes? Who would they compete against? How many people are interested? So it's really a bit of a complicated process, but it can be done. But it would start with writing a letter to the athletic director and getting a faculty member to be your sponsor to kind of help you with that process.
Okay. Well, the audience, if you have a following up questions, please type in the chat box, and we'll move on to the next one. What kind of conflict of interest are the coach concerned about?
I don't know what they necessarily mean by conflict of interest. I think the only thing that the coach may be concerned about is if you may be playing other sports, maybe, if they're giving you a scholarship, I'm sure the coach may not want you to play another sport, like another NCAA sport. I would think that would only be the only conflict of interest that the coach would be worried about. If you told the coach, hey, I want to come there and do fencing and do football, I think they'll be pretty concerned about that. They'll be like, I don't know if we want you to do football, but outside of that, I don't know of any really other conflict of interest that coaches would be concerned about.
Okay. Well, again, the audience, I guess this is from a child, or not child, Bao. If you can provide some specific context, then it'd be better for Todd to answer.
Hey, sorry, that question was from me. I was using another computer.
Okay.
Hey, I was wondering, because some of the fencing coaches of the colleges, they have their own clubs. And so I was asking, like students from this kind of clubs, they apply for college, and the coach is one of the assistant coaches or head coaches of the university. Would that be conflict of interest?
No. Now I see what you're talking about. No. That wouldn't be conflict. That'd be fine. And what's interesting now, and that happens like that in a lot of other sports too, where the assistant coaches are like coaches a club team, and a lot of times they'll try to funnel the kids from that club team to that particular university. You know what I mean? So that happens a lot. But no, that wouldn't be a conflict of interest. That would be fine.
Okay, so they can recommend their own students.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Course. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I see another question here. It says, "Well, do colleges pay for training, travel, equipment costs if the athlete fences for the college without out of the pocket expenses for parents?" Now, I don't know exactly that, but I do know this, that every college that hosts fencing or that sponsors fencing, they have a budget. So they will definitely, certain things I know for sure will be paid for by the school. So any type of travel that student athletes have to do, any type of the training. So for example, any of the practices, the training, those will be held by the coaches. So that'll be, there won't be an additional cost. The travel won't be an additional cost. Now, I don't know about the equipment, but that may be the only additional fee, may be equipment fees. But as far as, like I said, the training, the travel, any type of medical, service or medical attention that the student athlete needs, since it's a sport sponsored by the school, the student athlete has access to the university athletic trainers. And if the student gets hurt while fencing, then they will be under the university's insurance policy in terms of for injuries. So there won't be any additional out-of-pocket costs in those areas. Now, I can't speak to the equipment side, but as far as just the training, any type of hospitalization or injury or anything like that, or any type of equipment, or any type of facility use, that won't be any additional charge.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the travel costs, does that only apply to the NCAA games, or does it apply to any other national tournaments or international tournament?
Well, that only applies to the NCAA sanctioned games, is what the university will pay for. Okay. Yeah, so they never will have to pay for a plane ticket to go somewhere because the school is paying for it. You know what I mean? So any of the travel, meals, or lodging, while you're away, all that is paid for by the university.
Okay, so let me put this way then: if that person is good enough to go to Olympics, then the school won't pay for it.
No, they won't pay for that. They won't. No, they won't pay for that. But if you're good enough to go to Olympics, I'm sure you're going to have a sponsor, so that sponsor will probably pay for it.
Right. No, not necessarily go to Olympics, right? So maybe Junior Olympics that the freshmen can still go, right?
Right.
Some other national tournaments, and we know that some of the schools do pay, but I guess it's by their choice, not by the normal.
Right, and I will say this though. Some schools would probably volunteer to pay or try to find a way to pay, because that is great publicity for the school.
Right.
It's phenomenal publicity, not only for the school, but then it's great for the coach because it's great for recruiting. Because if a coach could say, "Oh, I had an Olympic fencer, I had an Olympian here," then more kids are going to be like, "Oh, I should go there too," because they're producing Olympians. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. The school probably would find a way to probably pay for it, but I don't think by the rules that they can, but it's ways that they can maneuver and take care of it.
Sure. Understood. Yep. Well, I guess then that's the last question. I'll give one more minute and to see if anybody wanted to type in any more. And but overall, I think it's a very informative seminar, and I learned a lot myself. As some people said, they learned a lot too. So that's great information. Thank you very much.
That's good. And I would encourage anyone to, like I said, if you got any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or especially in a sport like fencing, where no one really gets a full ride, where a lot of the student athletes are really going to be paying a lot in, tuition. I would encourage any parent to reach out to me if y'all have any questions about financial aid, or if you need help with any type of financial aid appeals or anything like that, because there's absolutely ways you can get more money from a school that outside of the financial aid package that they offer you. I see we had another question, right? One more.
It's from Charlie, and it's not a question. It says, I only want to mention that one more time, my appreciation. I participate in Duke University's recruitment. I thought I already knew something, but your presentation shed more lights than what I knew. Thank you so much, and I will definitely look for help in the future.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, so Todd, and we will publish this video recording tonight, and we will also attach your contact information there. If some interested families would like to reach out to you, and that's their choice.
Okay.
We as a nonprofit organization, and we will do for the public good. We will not promote any individual speakers, but we will definitely pass on information to everyone.
Okay, that sounds good. Definitely. Thank you. I want to thank everybody. Hopefully everyone got some good information here. Hopefully everyone learned a little bit more about the recruiting process than they knew previously. And like I said, thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it. And like I said, if anyone wants to reach out to me, feel free.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much then. Have
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.